Hello and welcome to this lesson on the Cold War conflicts. We're going to start with the Korean War and the Cuban Missile Crisis in today's lesson. Just a reminder that you are to watch and listen to the video without looking at the notes first. Fill in as much as you can, remember on the notes, and then if you need to, re-watch the video and complete the notes so that you're ready when you come to class on the next time it's due. We are going to start with the Korean War. The Korean War occurred from 1950 to 53. If you remember, Korea was taken over by Japan during World War II. The Soviet Union took the northern half of Korea after World War II, and the U.S. took the southern half of Korea. This is because Japan lost the war and its colonies were divided up or returned to their original owners. So in this case, Korea is divided in half between the Soviets and the Americans, and as you can see on your screen, North Korea here, which is right next to China, is controlled by the Soviets, and South Korea is controlled by the United States. North Korea became communist because it was controlled by the Soviet Union, and South Korea became more sympathetic to the United States. North Korea, with the help of China, who is also communist at this time, begin to try to invade South Korea to take it over from the United States. So North Korea initially actually takes over almost all of South Korea because South Korea doesn't have as many military forces as North Korea did, especially with the help of the Chinese. So President Truman immediately sends U.S. forces to help South Korea resist the aggression from North Korea and China. From 1951 to 53, neither side made large gains in territory. They might win a battle here or there, but nothing significantly changed from the original dividing line between North Korea and South Korea before the war started in 1950. The South Koreans and the Americans managed to push North Korea back to the 38th parallel, which is the line that divides North and South Korea in half, and it also corresponds to that line of latitude that runs around the globe. So the war ends in a stalemate, meaning neither side was able to make any gains. In 1953, a demilitarized zone, or the DMZ, is set up in Korea at the 38th parallel. This means the area is not allowed to have any military forces. The same DMZ that was set up in 1953 still separates North Korea and South Korea today, and it's a heavily guarded border, and there are all kinds of landmines in between North Korea and South Korea in that DMZ area. And it is referred to as the 38th parallel. So that is one of the Cold War conflicts between the United States and the Soviet Union. The U.S. and the Soviet Union, as you might notice, are not directly engaging with each other, but they are fighting through a conflict occurring between two other countries. The second Cold War conflict that we are going to look at in this lesson is the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. In 1959, Fidel Castro, who became Cuba's leader for many decades, set up a communist dictatorship and became an ally of the Soviet Union. This concerns the American people because Cuba is only 90 miles away from the United States. You can see it right here on the map. In 1962, an American spy plane flying over Cuba took pictures of nuclear missile launching sites that were being built in Cuba by the Soviet Union. President Kennedy and his advisors spend a week kind of locked away in the White House trying to come up with a response that will keep them out of what could potentially be World War III and nuclear war with the Soviets. So President Kennedy goes on TV and starts to speak about the secret, swift, and extraordinary buildup of Soviet missiles in Cuba and why this is concerning for the American people. And you can see from this map here, this is the range that the missiles would reach. So these would be the shorter range The medium range, you can see, can reach over Washington, D.C., and then the long-range missiles that the Soviets were planning to put in Cuba would cover almost all of the United States. And so the president is very concerned about Soviet missiles being this close to our country. President Kennedy announced on TV that the U.S. Navy would blockade or close off Cuba until the Soviets removed the missile sites. The two superpowers became very close to a nuclear war. The ships that the Soviets were sending to Cuba with more material drive right up in the water to the blockade. Look at the American ships. Okay, the U.S. Navy is getting nervous. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Are they going to try to cross the line? Are we going to be at war? Or are they going to go back? After 5 days, the Soviet ships do turn around, and the Soviets agree to take the missiles out of Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis manages to end without a war or an invasion of Cuba, but it was a very, very tense time, and nobody really knew the outcome. But the two superpowers did want to avoid war with each other and managed to do that. The Cuban Missile Crisis is the second conflict that we are looking at during the Cold War. This one is a more direct conflict between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, but it doesn't have any actual fighting. So make sure you complete your notes, and I hope you learned a lot from this lesson on the two Cold War conflicts in your assignment this week. See you in class.